Eli, it's good to have you back for V2. You're sharing so much interesting, novel things about search on LinkedIn and Twitter or X and the like. So I figured let's not wait a couple months. Let's get you on here. And I think a great place to start with that is just kind of the current pulse from the market, like from search, people you were talking to. What are people saying out there?
So I think there's like some interesting stuff happening around the way search is viewed, which is unfortunately leading to a lot of marketing layoffs. So from the higher up standpoint, search is volatile. And because it's volatile and there's some sort of budget constrained environment, search is on the chopping block. And I think that maybe is twofold. And I do want to write about this a little bit more as I think about it and talk to more people. I think SEO in general has a really hard time explaining themselves and defending themselves. And there's like, everyone makes fun of SEO. It says that they say it depends and they're not clear and they're not confident. And our predictions are janky at times and our forecasts are made up and all that. But that will lead to times like this when, for whatever reason, CMOs are being forced to cut budget. And then they look at their teams, they're like, well, I don't really know what SEO has done for me in the last year. So I feel confident that if I get rid of this SEO person or SEO team or SEO agency, things will still be fine. And I have more money to focus on whatever other channel. And maybe it's, AI optimization, maybe it's AI content, maybe it's a PR agency, whatever it is. But like SEO hasn't done enough to say like, hey, we matter. This is really important. Don't fire us. Don't get rid of the agency. And I see a lot of that happening now. But I also feel really confident that that's a mistake. And from the companies I'm talking to that are making this mistake, they are of the belief that things will be fine for them. And I don't think that's correct. I think that things will absolutely not be fine for them. They're gonna see a raw deal in the next year and they'll be panicking, which means I'm doing something a little bit counterproductive. I've actually increased all of my proposals and increased my consulting rates for this year because I know I won't close them, but I'm high anchoring for that point in time in 6 months from now when they're going to come back and say, hey, yeah, we do need to prioritize SEO, or the, agency that we went with that was cheap actually didn't help us with our goals. So I'm high anchoring. Maybe I'll negotiate at that point, but at this point, I don't want to be the lowest option and win consulting clients just because I'm cheap.
Makes sense. I mean, even looking, my sense is it's like not just looking back, but it's also perception of forward. It's like there has been a lot of apocalypse talk trailing 6 months. I think is even calming down a little bit from where it was, that the world is not over. We're going to be around for a while with search. And I wonder if that's the kind of CMO budget cutting mindset too, for that SEO will still be a channel, to your point, in a year, 2 years. And they're going to be like, why didn't we invest in this? And they're going to call up Eli again.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing I've been saying a lot. It's like, I think the way SEO is viewed is incorrect. I think the way the way leaders view SEO, it's funny. They almost still view it from like the 15-year-old version of SEO of like, we're tweaking keywords and title tags. And they're like, I don't need that because like we're AI. We don't need that like stuff, 15 synonyms in a piece of content. You guys are obsolete. And what I've been saying is like the role of SEO is absolutely not that. The role of SEO is to be that translation layer between a user and a search engine. And that search engine today is Google with, 90+% of the market. In 5 years from now, I think it'll still be Google, but it may not be. It may be ChatGPT. It may be, Amazon, and maybe Apple, whatever it is. But the role of SEO is still to be that translation layer. So today's SEO tactics are fairly similar to 10 years ago SEO tactics. But again, 5 years from now, the SEO tactics will be a little different if we've moved over to Amazon or Apple or Meta, whatever it is, or ChatGPT. But it's the role of SEO to use those tactics. So maybe we're all doing AI searches, but then who is supposed to optimize the website and understand the users to have a website show up in AI searches? That's SEO. So today's SEO might be obsolete and probably will be obsolete and probably should be obsolete. But if SEO adapts, that's still the new job. And I think it's funny that I see a lot of talk on LinkedIn about, is it called Geo. Have you seen this stuff? Geo.
Yes, yeah.
And it's stupid. It's like,
I'm rolling my eyes.
again, the focus is on the wrong place. It's on the engine instead of like, again, I think SEO is that layer between between the search engine or the search product, whether it's an engine or not, and the user, and SEO translates that. We don't need to change the name. Like, you're still optimizing for users that use search.
Yeah, there was a phase there where we felt like almost needing to market to that. And there are a few different things that we suggest impact it. And it's not a bad idea to make sure search engines can crawl. Like, make sure you're allowing them to index your information. Like, small things like that are not bad. But people who are spinning up entire products, it's just like such. It's just, yes.
Well, I mean, I just had a newsletter on this topic where like the tactics are actually the same. You want to be visible, and you want to build links, not links really, but build visibility, which is obviously what you do, to show the engines, or I don't know, do we call them engines? Whatever they are, to show the products that are doing the human level reasoning that you are important. So if you're selling, SaaS, let's say you are in the analytics space and someone does a search, instead of a search on a search engine, they do a prompt of like, tell me the best analytics tools. Well, using the keyword analytics many, many times in your website isn't going to move that needle. It's really going to be like, well, how do you appeal to users? How do you show users that you are the best analytics product in the world? Well, a lot of people talk about you as the best analytics product in the world, and where people talk about you changes. So I don't know yet whether Google or any of these other engines are using actual Twitter/X data, but they should. Or they're definitely using Reddit, and the level of content they're using to understand what is important should expand. So our old way of understanding link building was domain authority. Oh, it has to be a really important website. Twitter doesn't count. Pinterest doesn't count. Facebook doesn't count because it's social media, and that does not have real domain authority. And there'd be all these complicated ways of, well, if you look at it, it's like a big website, and then waters down the domain authority. But really, if you're trying to be a AI engine which thinks like a human, I would love to count social media, because that's where you get the real people validating something. And then the pushback might be like, well, how do you trust social media? It can be gamed. Well, how do you as a human trust social media? Well, you assess a profile, you assess content, say, is that real? Is that misinformation? Is that a fake profile? The AI engines do the exact same thing like humans. Yes, they're not humans, there's flaws, but that's the idea. So this whole idea of like, hey, do SEO differently for AI, well, it's the same as it always is, like, be visible, show authority.
Yeah, and maybe there's like little edge things you can do today, like has always been the case with SEO, but this stuff is moving so fast. Like, it's like, why do those little edge case optimizations when we can make a much bigger difference doing the big big wins?
I think the edges will disappear also because of the feedback loop. So with regular SEO, the feedback loop, and I've had this, like, obviously all these friends on the Google search team, just because of where I live. I live right near Google, and I'll say things to them like, hey, what's the deal with, like, I don't know, let's pick on Reddit. What's the deal with all this Reddit and like terrible Reddit spam? And they'll be like, yeah, we know about it, right? Or I'll ask about like over-optimized content. I even asked about like the site reputation abuse. I've been asking them about it for years. That was where they nixed all the media websites that were being fake Groupons. So I asked them about it years ago. I'm like, hey, why do you guys like let this thing? They're like, yeah, we know about it. Like, but they need to write an algorithm to like go nail it. And sometimes they write the algorithm, and a site reputation abuse is a perfect example of it, and didn't work because like it didn't get the right content, because it's not like Baidu actually is a little bit more manual. The Baidu is search engine of China. So it's not like, the Google engineers are like, okay, from now on, these LA Times URLs don't get to show up, but all these other LA Times URLs do get to show up, because it's not manual. That just gets messy. It's an algorithm. So they say, if it looks like this, then don't show up. If it doesn't look like that, it's fine. It's still LA Times, or same with CNN, Wall Street Journal, all those big media properties. So they launched and it didn't work. And AI is much faster because AI is constantly training itself. So if you find that edge case, you're like, wow, if you spam, I don't know, you get 100,000 Twitter accounts all like with bots and they all tweet the exact same thing, then you'll show up in AI and you shouldn't be there. Well, then a bunch of real users use AI and they're like, oh, don't show that thing. Obviously, that's not the product I'm looking for. Well, you've just trained AI not only to not show that website, but you've also trained AI to like question itself. Why did we show that website? Oh, it's because 100,000 Twitter accounts. Okay, in the future, we're not going to do that exact thing. So it learns so much faster and it doesn't need an algorithm update. Like I know, like I learned all of my greatest technical SEO by getting brutalized by the Google Panda update. And it took us forever to get out because Google had to keep running that algo update. Like well, not real time at all. It's a product.
Yeah, no, I agree. Those are definitely how I'd perceive it as well. I mean, increasingly, it's very, very difficult to not be a good product and succeed in today's world. And all those trying to exploit the edge cases are, it's a fool's game for potentially getting surfaced for a moment in time before the AI adapts to it. So you have you put out a great book, Product-Led SEO. I think you definitely were a big part of this kind of framing becoming more popular over time. What year did you publish your book?
It came out in 2021. So I missed out on all like the good stuff people do when they write books, like have book signings and go on book tours. I just sat on Zoom.
Nice. Well, I see in the search trend data, it's kind of flat up until 2021, and then there's starting to be an ascent of searches around product SEO. I didn't look at product-led SEO, but I assume there's some variations on that. But like historically, we had this kind of church and state of link building and technical, or content and technical, and in a lot of ways. And thinking about your book, I also talked to Sharanya from Boatsetter and Angie and Retail Me Not on our podcast recently about product SEO. I'm just more of the mind recently that this is just the new technical SEO. It's like how we should be framing the other thing other than content. It's not technical and content, it's product SEO and content. Is that a fair assessment, or like how are you perceiving that yourself?
Yeah, so I wrote the book for fun. I mean, I wrote the book because I was like quitting my job, my full-time job at SurveyMonkey, and I just wanted to have like a point of view on how I was going to sell consulting. I never thought I would sell so many books and like, people would talk about it. I never thought anyone I knew would even know I had a book. I felt like I was going to go meet friends and they'd be like, "Oh, you have a book? Since when? Like, where do I find it?" And like now I have all these conversations like, "Oh, I love your book." And I'm like, I'm honored that people read my words and like that's like a really special feeling. But I really wrote it because it was just this point of view of there has to be something different about SEO. Like technical SEO, I mean, there's the best technical SEO guide you could really get is from Google. They tell you what to do good technical SEO for your website. And it's almost not even required anymore. Like Google has gotten really good that even if you don't do great technical SEO, they can still figure it out. And most people don't like intentionally make technical mistakes. Like most CMSs have pretty good technical SEO. So there's not a lot of like margin you can get out of improving technical SEO. I know there's agencies that sell technical SEO audits. I recently talked to a massive company about like why their SEO is down 60%. They were insisting on getting a technical SEO audit. And like, that's not your issue unless like you brought in a new CTO who broke your entire website. Like that's not why your website is down 60%. But they wanted a technical SEO audit. So I recommended an agency to go do that for them. But for most cases, you're not going to get massive improvements out of technical SEO. And then flipping over to links, links is the way of getting links has changed. Like when I first started doing SEO and you first started doing SEO, actually, I remember your SEO talk on links at MozCon in, I don't know, your first one.
A long time ago, yeah.
2011, maybe 2012, 13, something, one of those years. Like you could acquire links, you could buy links. And now the engines, it's been many years. The engines have gotten much smarter. And like we were just talking about AI and how it understands context and knows whether it's manipulated. So that also, like, you have to work much harder. And I think the next level is product SEO, where you can't just write a piece of content and expect that it'll resonate with users. You really have to massage your website, massage your product so it makes sense exactly for the users. And at a scaled level, that's product SEO. So if you want to appeal to actual users, the product itself has to appeal to those users in the funnel. And I think that's changing because those other ways of doing SEO just don't work anymore. And when I first wrote the book, they did work. Like, you could, do a technical SEO audit, maybe get some margins. You could write a lot of content and get a little bit more traffic. You probably could buy a bunch of links and have $1 million link budgets and improve your rankings. And I think now it doesn't work. And the best thing about product SEO for those that like want to start really investing into it, it's hard. And the harder it is, the harder anything in marketing is, the better it is for you because you build a moat. So if any sort of marketing was just like, oh, those with the deepest pockets will win, well, then you just get deeper pockets, like raise more money, like be cheaper, do something, and then you win. And it's not like that. Marketing is obviously like being creative and doing something that appeals to users. And product SEO is that. It's like layering on your creativity, your ability to see things that others don't see and build for the user.
Yeah, with technical, I mean, it was like two sides of the coins. There were two more things broken, and also if there's less things broken, and also you essentially can only get to, you have a fixed website, and your competitors can also get to a fixed website. You can't compete on your website not being broken. You have to compete on something. That's normally the quality of the product. And if we're integrated in product as SEOs, that's the lever that can go perpetually, hypothetically. Maybe some commodity products, that's a little harder to do. But for things that aren't commodities, I mean, you can definitely assist in that so much. Guiding on user experience, all those things, and just putting a name on it. I think that was just an important part. Like, I was struggling for so long. I was kind of like, it's really site-wide SEO. It's just SEO consulting. But then, I mean, maybe it's just obvious in retrospect, but this product, you helped kind of popularize it. So thank you for that.
Yeah, totally unintentional and right time, right place. But I think there's more people are going to be gravitating towards it as they figure out that other things don't work. But, to be transparent, most people don't know that yet. So again, I talk to potential consulting clients all the time, and they want that old stuff. They want the technical SEO. They want the link building. They want content roadmaps. And like that, one of the biggest problems with content in general, if that's your only approach to SEO, it doesn't scale right. So if you're doing product SEO, if you find a scalable way to do it, like the companies you mentioned, like Retail Me Not, Angie, that scales into, hundreds of thousands of unique assets. But if you're just doing content, well, when I was at SurveyMonkey, we had a team of, I think, 4 content writers, and they were producing maybe 12 pieces per month. So that meant at a regular year, we were producing less than 150 pieces of content. And if each one of those pieces of content would appeal to, let's say 10,000 users, that doesn't really scale at all. Whereas if you do product-led SEO and you have all these pages, each one of those pages maybe appeals to 1,000 users, that scales pretty well. So that's the challenge. And then this is another thing, obviously, we have to talk about, which is AI content. So AI content, and this is why there are layoffs in SEO. So CMOs, CEOs think this is the unlock. I understood the content problem, that I can only produce as much content as I have people and money, but AI content, now it's infinite. Well, that's a challenge because they're producing some really, really bad content. I'm seeing websites that have like one service or one product in a small area, like in upstate New York. They have like, it's a doctor in upstate New York, and they have 150,000 pages. Like, that makes no sense. And that's like a fast way to a Google penalty. And the content's thin. It looks obviously AI written. And I don't think Google despises AI content the same way I think Google approaches AI content the same way they approached content you bought for $5 off of Fiverr from, the Philippines or, any other country where you can buy things at a lower labor rate. it has to be good content. It has to appeal to users. And if you are a doctor's office in upstate New York, you don't need 150,000 pages. And like, that's the way of approaching it. So AI content is not the solution. I think AI in general is a tool for the content writers you have. The real solution is product-led SEO.
Yeah. What we're increasingly saying is the Venn diagram of the two is like that dichotomy of people that are like, I'm AI content, I'm pressing a button, and then I'm human content. Really, the best is the intersection of those two things, sparring partner. And but yeah, it's so interesting here. You feel a culture of certain companies that come in the door from a lead standpoint, and you can just not surprisingly, we're getting a ton of AI leads. And sometimes just the nature of that denomination means they want AI content, and you just know that's not going to result. And they've already done it in a lot of times, and maybe it's kind of helping their traction graphs, but not actual conversion graphs, which hopefully the VCs eventually come back to at some point.
Yeah. One other challenge with product SEO is that you need more participants. So with content, you don't really, if you're an SEO manager and you're doing content SEO, you don't need anything other than money. You just use your money and you buy freelance content on Upwork or any other marketplace. And that's your SEO. If you're technical SEO, that's a little bit more challenging. You're writing tickets. One of the dirty secrets of technical SEO is that most stuff is never executed against because it needs a bunch of other people to do it. But from your SEO output standpoint, you've identified a bunch of stuff and you've written a lot of tickets, and in theory, you're doing a good job. When it comes to links, again, you don't need anything other than budget. You just, hire an agency and they get you the links. When it comes to product-led SEO, now you're getting deep into the guts of the company and you need more people to shift the way they approach everything. And you're a product manager. You're different. You're a conductor having other people do stuff. And that is very, very challenging. So many companies don't execute on it. And like I talk to, leads all the time, and we talk about how they can shift their SEO, and then they just look at me like, that's impossible. I'm the CMO. Like the CTO will not listen to me. Or, oh, you're talking to me about this product stuff. I'm the CMO. We have a chief product officer and they're not on this call and they're not going to do it. Or they'll say things like, oh, I'm the CMO, but we have an agency of record for SEO and they don't do that. So we can't do this. We're just not going to do it. It sounds nice. It's a nice thing you're talking about, this product thing, but yeah, that's not what we're going to do. So the inertia against really shifting this whole approach to SEO is tough because like you need so many more people to go along with it. And I found that the only time that companies really go along with it is when they can either see the future and know that like the future's not bright if they continue doing what they're doing, or they've hit a bottom. So they've tried everything. There's a company I talked to recently, one of these massive startups that will probably IPO when the IPO market opens up. So like a Series H startup, and they're on their fourth agency. So they keep doing this and they keep firing the agency like, oh, this doesn't work. This is one of those companies where they have so many other irons in the fire where like they're doing TV ads and they're doing billboards and they have, thousands of salespeople, but SEO is a channel that should work for them. And it doesn't work for them because they're approaching it those other ways. Like they keep hiring agencies to do technical audits. They keep hiring agencies to buy links. They keep hiring agencies to like build content. And they've even built a little product SEO, but they built it easy. They didn't really ingrain like the way they're going to do it. They had the content team build some product SEO, and they have not hit bottom yet. Like they know they're hitting bottom, but they keep blaming external factors like, oh, that agency sucked, so we fire that agency. We just brought a new one in. Things are going to be different. And now they're on the fourth agency. And I did try to pitch them on like, hey, you realize I was talking to them before they hired the fourth agency. I'm like, hey, this is time number 4. Like maybe it's time to do something different, but they didn't opt for that. They opted to hire an agency that basically, sing the same song everyone else did of like, hey, we're going to do better technical, better content. So that's on them.
Yeah, that should be some rule. You're just not allowed to hire X amount of agencies, but I completely agree. It's I'll hear people more recently heard someone say like, oh, we trialed this other agency. They did one thing and it didn't hit the mark. I'm like, oh, no wonder. Like you had them only do one thing. Like that's not setting them up for success. I mean, I get trialing people, but that can be problematic to success. And yeah, if you fired 3 agencies, you're the problem. Almost certainly.
Actually, a really good analogy for this is something I'm dealing with right now. So like I'm in California, we have to file taxes for corporations on March 15th. So that's next week. So I'm like dealing with my accountant. And I think where we are with SEO is very similar to like filing taxes. So your accountant just files the taxes of the numbers that you report. There's not going to be much variance between tax filers. If you really want to improve your tax situation, you got to change the business, change the way like you spend money and make money, invest money, and then you give the numbers over to the accountant, and then your tax situation looks a lot different. And I think where companies are like focusing is like, hey, that other accountant made me pay too many taxes. I fired that accountant. Now I got this new accountant, and everything's going to be totally different. And like, no, that all the accountant does is like fix what you give them, or really put together what you've given them. Where SEO should be is we're modifying, like we should be, again, not a good analogy for, for where we are in a company, but it's the CFO. That's where SEO should be thinking, like, let's change the way we approach business and let's change the way all this. And then that outcome looks a little bit different. And I think many companies are still expecting SEO to like be different, but SEO is really at the margins all the same. Like I have not seen a technical audit look any different between any agency. I've not seen any content roadmaps look any different. It's basically like Ahrefs, SEMrush with some color coding. Like, hey, these are the top things you're going to do. Maybe they get a little creative and like pull in some answer the public or something like that. But it's all really the same. That's not different. There's no difference between the agencies there.
We could go down a rabbit hole in there. I like our roadmaps. We do offer roadmaps, but I haven't seen other agencies.
You're totally creative. You're thinking about the user. You are not the typical agency. That's why I like you. We talk all the time.
All right. I appreciate that. So, I mean, it's been a while since you published that book. Anything you would kind of like reflect or update on 3-4 years later?
I probably wouldn't even focus on technical SEO at all. So like when I wrote it, I had to focus on technical SEO. I'd probably pull that out completely because I think it's unnecessary and a little confusing. And I would obviously add in some AI.
There you go. That makes sense. You're great at controversial takes that are accurate. What is something you believe in from an SEO standpoint that most people would disagree with you in our current industry?
I think that most companies shouldn't bother doing SEO. And the reason is because they don't map through what an SEO funnel looks like. And I know it's very hard for agencies who have to pay employees. It's much easier for me because I don't have any employees. And like if I sign a client, that's good. And I want to sign as many clients as possible. But if I don't, it's not like I have to fire anybody. So I think a lot of SEO agencies pitch SEO. And when I talk to them, I talk to the agency owners like, hey, that doesn't seem like it's going to work out. Or like, I heard like I talked to this client and then they ended up going with you. I don't think that's a good idea. Like, I don't see SEO being part of their funnel. Why did you sign them? And it's hard for them to be transparent about that. But like a lot of times those relationships do end up badly because it's not a fit. And I stumbled upon this accidentally. Like one of my first consulting clients was an analytics company, and their analytics tool cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and had to be baked into the product. So I did typical SEO. I gave them an SEO audit, and then I made recommendations on content, and SEO didn't seem to be working. I was only on a 3-month contract. So like SEO didn't work my entire contract, or a 6-month contract. Didn't work my entire contract. And I was like, what am I doing wrong here? And then as I looked at their analytics tool, so they have great analytics, as I looked at their analytics, I realized that SEO made no sense for their funnel. They cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, which meant that spending that amount of money, there had to be multiple decision makers. So it wasn't like e-commerce where it's 10:45 in the morning in California, and I've already made multiple e-commerce purchases, and I didn't have to check in with anybody. Open my phone, I Googled and I purchased. Right. So when it comes to making a hundreds of thousands of dollar purchase for a company, that doesn't happen like that. Like you do some Googling, you're like, oh, analytics. Okay, let me bookmark this for later. next week when I meet my boss, we'll have one-on-one. And then when we'll meet the CFO, we'll talk about these things. We'll meet the engineers, we'll talk about these things. Like, it doesn't happen from SEO. So that was one, like that there was multiple decision makers. The second was the timeline and the amount of touches that had to happen. So e-commerce, I Google, I buy, and I'm done. No more touches unless there's retargeting. But when it comes to like a big expensive SaaS purchase, so I Google, I find something, then I go to G2, then I go to Capterra, then I go to all these other places. I watch some YouTube videos. SEO might have mattered, but by the time it was done, you had no idea, because like a salesperson had to fly out to the office and meet and demo their product. Like, maybe that's what closed the deal. SEO might have helped, but you have no idea. And it's just like so long in there. So then when I start thinking about like where SEO matters, if I were that company, I wouldn't invest in SEO. So when my contract ended, they hired an agency. So they continued to invest in SEO. But that's really the way I approach it in any potential engagement is, who's searching? What are they searching for? And how does SEO work in this journey? And how does this work in this funnel? And I think in many cases, it doesn't really work. So if it's something super novel, there's no search volume. If it's something with a really long purchase funnel, there's very little SEO. If it's something that's very, very expensive, like a house, does SEO matter for a house? I mean, maybe, right? Like, how you have all those realtors and they put like, the domain name on the sign for the house, right. So like, does that matter? Well, realtors will never know, right? But like, they're not doing any analytics on it. But those little things, what mattered the most in that house purchase? Like, SEO maybe, but like, you'll never know. So like, as you think about that journey, like, how does someone find a house? Like, well, maybe they subscribed to a newsletter, or maybe they drove down the street. So that's the way I think about it. And then if you really calculate how much SEO is going to cost, so many agencies cost upwards of $10,000 per month, just because that's the cost of time. And, so that's $120,000 for the year. And then there's all the engineering and the design and the content, for a company could end up being the millions that they're really indirectly and directly investing in SEO. And then you're like, well, how much does it matter? Are we going to ever get ROI on those millions? Some companies, yes, many times, and some companies probably not. And like, that's the thing. So I approach every conversation from the standpoint of like, is there an SEO buyer here? And is this a channel worth funding or not? And if not, there's other channels. Like there's content, there's PR content, which I think is a fantastic channel. And I think you do a great job of. And then there's paid media. There's companies that I love this when I talk to companies and ask them why they don't do any paid media, like with Google or Meta. And they're like, it's too expensive. I hear that so often. Like, that's like, it's a weird response. So like, you'd rather spend on SEO because it's theoretically cheaper, but has less conversion opportunity than like spend on something that's, seems to be too expensive. That's not necessarily logical to me.
Yeah, there is a messy middle in there where those very high price things, hypothetically, you introduce one buyer, you've paid for the SEO that you described. Like, so that's like, I have a personal example of that where we will do SEO for ourselves and rarely is there attribution to it, but there'll be like one customer per year that's worth $250,000 that very clearly attributes to it. And obviously there's there's unwritten costs that go into that. And it doesn't scale. I think that's undoubtable. I know you think in scaling. So that's problematic if you're like thinking about like, how does this company become a $50 million company? It's probably not on the back of SEO, but is there something productive there? Maybe.
But I think it comes down to like how much you're spending on that. So like, if you're using your employees' time to do SEO, you haven't really chosen to make a massive investment there. So let's say, and this is one that I think will be interesting how it plays out in the future with all these other channels. But I think potentially influencer is going to grow as a marketing channel. Like many companies are not using influencer yet. But many companies are probably going to start turning that on because there's ways to use influencers and micro influencers within an industry. And that's where you maybe get attribution, maybe don't get attribution. And it does that SEO thing where like you get like, you look bigger, you seem more important. So micro influencer might mean you pay, like Notion's an example. They just paid Snoop Dogg to do this whole thing on LinkedIn. I don't know if that makes any sense. I'm sure Snoop Dogg wasn't cheap, but like, could you pay a micro influencer $1,000 a month to just like talk about you and use you? Maybe there's no attribution, but that seems like a good idea. But should you pay Snoop Dogg? So like, that's where you think about that messy middle, and SEO makes sense. And like, I do my own SEO too, and I'm sure like I just optimize for my name and my book, but I'm not spending any money on it. And I think that's the decision. And like, how much money should you spend on it? So I talked about this on other podcasts where like I interviewed at Google during the pandemic. So I interviewed and didn't have to go there. So I figured it's an interesting role, and it's always fun to talk to Googlers from that perspective. So I was interviewing for this role to do SEO for Google Cloud. And when we started the interviewers would say to me like, "Hey, do you have any questions for me?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, I have a couple." And then I used up all the time asking them all the questions because like I was just, maybe I take the job, maybe I wouldn't, but I was actually more curious. And my main question was like, why are you doing SEO? You have like your Google Cloud. And I also pushed them on. They're like, yeah, hey, you're Google. Don't you know someone?
You didn't get the job.
Right, I didn't get. No, they ended up closing the rec. It was one of those things. I've interviewed at Google multiple times. Like I did really well, and they're like, "Oh, sorry, yeah, we've changed the rec." So it always ends up feeling like a waste of time. But it's interesting to talk and learn from Google. But like Google they have two competitors for Google Cloud. They have Amazon and Microsoft. And like I learned from the analytics client, I highly doubt that SEOs can influence that decision. But the big thing around that is Google Cloud makes billions of dollars. So should Google spend $1 million of those billions on SEO, even if it doesn't necessarily attribute? Yeah, it's fine. Like it's a rounding error for them. But if you're like a venture funded startup and you've just raised $10 million, should you spend one of those $10 million on an SEO effort that you can't really attribute and even crystallize what that funnel might look like? So probably not. Like that's the way I'd approach it. If you're OpenAI and you have hundreds of billions of dollars to toss at SEO, and I don't even know if OpenAI does SEO, then maybe. Perplexity is a great example. Like they are doing SEO. Is that effective? I don't know, but they're also doing all these other things and they have lots of money to throw around. So that's the way I would calculate it, is like, is there some sort of journey here? And if so, how much do you have to invest in that journey? And what's the trade-off of that journey? And a lot of times, like I have these conversations, there's a very clear trade-off, because if they're peeling money away from SEO, putting money into SEO, they're peeling money away from one of those other channels like paid marketing, which could be expensive, but it works. Like they know their CAC, they know their LTV, and they're taking money to invest in SEO. So that's a bet. Whereas like if you're Google, they didn't really take money from anywhere. They're just like, they just created another $1 million to spend in SEO.
Yeah, no, going back to the product SEO conversation, one of the things we're thinking about more recently, and I think ties this a little bit, is if you're making recommendations that have value independent of the SEO outcome, which I think is happening more and more, that becomes even more blurry as a conversation. Like, is the value, like, would I be creating value for this company for their product pages, even if search didn't exist? If so, hypothetically, that ROI equation, we're doing that on the content side too. Like we're doing more thought leadership, sales enablement content, and like all that could directly drive more outcomes for them from a link standpoint, but also hopefully brand recognition that drives more clicks. But yeah, more of those like secondary effort things, I think make that more productive generally. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of SEO agencies fail in their efforts, which is they're using keyword research to inform the content roadmap. And I like what you're saying. And that's something I did at SurveyMonkey, where if you focus on the journey, you write content even if the keyword research doesn't support it. So an example of this is branded content. So many SEO agencies would never write branded content because it just doesn't seem sexy to like get hired by a company and then write a bunch of content about their brand. But if you're focused on the journey and you're focused on conversions, you should write content about their brand. Like when I was at SurveyMonkey, one of the keywords we did not own for whatever reason was pricing. So we didn't own SurveyMonkey pricing. I forget who was ranking on it, but we didn't own it. And I spent a lot of effort on that. Like it was a weird thing to be like, hey, I'm spending the next 3 to 6 months on ranking on our own term for pricing. But once we ranked on it, we converted at a very high level. And I forget who was outranking us. It might've been one of those like G2s or Capterras. So when they were ranking on it, they were selling us back our own branded traffic. So there was very clear bottom line revenue that was attributed to the fact that we now were outranking them. And I think, I love the way you're approaching this, that this is sales enablement content. This is geared towards conversions, but most SEO efforts are not. They're really geared towards keyword research and then sorting by top search volume.
Yeah, agreed. It's done well. It's getting blurred. I mean, it was always probably the case that blurred together is the best way to do it. But now it's just like you literally have to do that, most likely, in so many of these things. Is there anything you've recently changed your mind on? Could be from a search standpoint. I think that'd be interesting to hear.
I really thought there would be an apocalypse from AI. And I thought that many companies would see their search volume decrease from AI. And I'm wrong. And I think there are two reasons I was wrong. One is AI is not nearly as popular as everyone thinks it is. Like, there are just not that many people that are doing. I know, like, whenever I say these things, I was like, well, I haven't Googled anything in the last year. I only use ChatGPT. So, like, there's a corner cases. That's fine. Like, there will always be people like that. But I don't think the data supports that the entire world is using ChatGPT. And despite what you're going to read on LinkedIn. And the second thing is, I also think that a lot of a lot of AI is basically just like search results. So while Google's not breaking out what came from AI, it's sort of the same thing, and users don't really like it as much. So they're just still clicking on the same place. I have not seen that many businesses, and I've access to many search consoles of information-only companies. And I don't think, for the most part, there is an apocalypse. There are definitely companies that have lost traffic, and maybe they deserve to lose traffic because, like, they didn't have the best content. It's also a weird environment, because in the last, I guess it's been a year, a little bit more than a year since like AI really like rolled out to everyone. Then there's also been multiple algo updates, so it's hard to like pinpoint what is it that changed traffic. But I'm wrong. Like, there was not an apocalypse, and I also don't think there will be an apocalypse.
Well, that's good.
There will be an apocalypse. I think that the users will shift, and but it's not going to be one of these like sudden events. I think it's going to be one of these events where, like, in a year from now, everyone's going to turn around and be like, oh yeah, that old SEO stopped really mattering so much. We should have focused on more product-led SEO.
Yeah, makes sense. So I wanted to circle back to the product SEO thing, a lever I wanted to pull on that I think is interesting. You said it was complicated. It's complicated to do product SEO. There's like many people involved. You have to change the company. But I'm guessing Eli is just not giving up generally. Like, what techniques or like characteristics? I mean, if there aren't techniques, what are the characteristics of companies that actually can accomplish this successfully? Are you like some examples, or like, is there certain role that you tend to report or like consult with that's more successful, or there are certain techniques you need to be on Slack, you need to talk to them weekly in a stand-up meeting, like stuff like that? Is there anything that might be helpful?
Yeah. So generally, I think SEO needs to have more soft skills. I don't think a lot of SEOs pride themselves on soft skills. I think they pride themselves on technical abilities and abilities to understand APIs and Google and all that, and algorithm leaks and algorithm holes. But I think soft skills are really important. So just to be able to convince and explain how SEO might change the trajectory of growth of a company. But there's also reality there, and this is like, what I found from all of the lead calls I've taken over the last 6 years, which is you have to be talking to the right people with the right goals. So if I'm talking to the CMO and they're goaled on very specific things related to, output of content or even rankings, there's nothing I can do that will shift them over to that mindset. I've been most successful when I talk to people with the growth title. So growth will straddle product and marketing, and they have engineers. They are almost like product managers, and they have more latitude to just choose, like, this is the way we're going to approach SEO. So, and then there are companies that, like, they're convinced that their CEO is convinced that the old way of SEO works. That's just not going to, there's nothing I can do to convince them that they're wrong and that they need to do something else. So I think that's the biggest learning, which is, I can like show them the light, but if they're not willing to look at it, then nothing will change. There's certain companies that will do it and they're open to it and it's logical and they want to shift everything they're doing. There's a company that I've been talking to now for the last 6 months, and they won't pull the trigger on SEO and any SEO whatsoever. And I have finally bridged the gap and like I'm talking to them in, more fruitful conversations because they brought the other teams in that have that goal. So I was talking to one team who were like, I met them at a conference and they're like, oh, we really should be doing that, but they had no control. And they're like, it's, belongs to another team and they have a different goal and all that. But like things are slowly aligning, and it's been like a 6-month process of them internally saying, hey, check out Eli's newsletter, or look at you read Eli's book, or like watch this video, or check out this podcast with Ross Hudgens. Like those kinds of things, they're bringing that other team along, and I'm impressed that they're willing to go through that effort. But if they weren't willing to go through that effort, I was having a conversation with someone who cannot action on anything I'm doing. And that's the biggest reality that I've discovered, both in consulting and in my full-time roles, that not everyone will be receptive to it, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, it makes sense. That's I think a very pattern matching thing on the chief growth officer. Sharanya Boatsetter said the exact same thing to me, that she's interviewed several chief growth officer people that she would report into as a product lead. She was like product SEO, and she found those were most productive as well. So it reminds me of, I think I have a LinkedIn post going up on this soon, of like, anytime someone comes to us for link building, they don't need link building. It's like some other problem, and it's the wrong mindset that you got to shift, and that's very, very difficult to do. But that's good to know that, I should be looking for growth titles now about whether this is going to go well or poorly.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that I discovered when just approaching SEO from a product lens. So marketers are responsible for deliverables. Marketers are responsible for content, or they may be responsible for reporting, but product is responsible for like building something. So they may have less ability to do things on their own, but because they're builders, they're also allocated resources. Like they'll be allocated an engineer to do something, or they'll be allocated, this is the best part about being in product, is they're allocated marketing itself to go action upon their product plans. So product, even better than growth is product, but product is like, they have the ability to really shape the way a company goes to market. And if SEO is baked in, they're shaping it with SEO. And if SEO isn't baked in, and this is very common, of course, is that product doesn't care about SEO. If SEO is not baked in, then it's marketing who's coming in either at the beginning or the end, but not in the middle. So product might go to marketing and be like, hey, I need an SEO plan for how we're going to launch this product. And then they don't revisit it. They accept whatever the marketing team sends over, or they build the product without any regard for SEO. And then they go to the marketers and be like, SEO it. So like, that's not very successful. But when SEO is product, it happens effectively.
Well, Eli, you mentioned your newsletter, Product-Led.SEO.com. Great Substack newsletter. You're putting out weekly, right?
Yep.
Is that fair to say? So go check that out. Subscribe. Follow Eli on LinkedIn, X. Are you active anywhere else, or where should people find you?
Read the book. That's it.
Read the book.
I'm active on Amazon.
Amazon. I get it. There you go. Yes. One of the few.
Yeah.
All right, Eli, thanks for coming on. This is great.
It's great. Good to see you again, Russ.